Good day, and okay, that was a botched. I don't know. I wanted
Good
to.
day, eh?
Good day, eh? No, all right. That's a good sign off.
Get off.
Damn, no.
Out.
Gadoot.
Dude.
Seacrest out.
This is the AT Banter Podcast, a balanced and entertaining look at assistive technology, accessibility, and its importance in people's lives. Join Rob Minot, Ryan Fleury, and Steve Barclay as they banter with people around the world about anything and everything regarding assistive technology and the disability community. Now, on with the show.
Hey, and welcome to yet another episode of AT Banter.
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 Banter. Banter.
Yeah.
I am Rob Minot, and joining me today, as usual, Mr. Ryan Fleury
Howdy.
and Mr. Steve Barclay,
Good day, y'all.
and of course, Mr. Cowbell's in the house. You know, I'm really surprised that we have not received any emails asking what the hell the deal is with the cowbell. Everybody just seems to have accepted the fact that we have a cowbell.
What's not to accept?
I don't know. I guess I just expected somebody, at least one person out there, being like, "Why are they going on about the cowbell?"
I told you our podcast needed more cowbell, and this just proves that I'm right.
Clearly, the audience agrees with you.
Absolutely.
How you guys doing?
I'm all right for a Wednesday.
Pretty darn fine. Hey,
What?
I got to tell you, I saw the most Canadian thing I have ever seen in my life the other day. I was out at the Vancouver Public Library wandering around setting up beacons for a beacon demonstration out there.
That's right.
And there was a dumpster diver going around from can to can, picking out Tim Hortons cups and rolling up the rim to win.
That's smart.
It is smart because during Roll Up the Rim to Win season, I tell you, I can't even tell you how many coffee cups I throw out, and then 2 minutes later, I'm like, "Oh, damn it! I forgot to roll up that rim." So I've probably thrown out a lot of winning cups.
For those of you who are not aware of the Tim Hortons roll up the rim to win thing, basically Tim Hortons prints prizes on the rims of their paper coffee cups, and if you roll up the rim, you can see if you've won something.
Yeah, and you can win like free donuts and free coffees and
money.
there's
Money. They got big prizes. Some of them. You can win a car.
Yeah, that's right. Win a car.
Yeah.
Win a house, win a car. Win a house, win a car.
So don't check your Tim Hortons cups.
Yeah.
Don't be a Rob.
Or be a Rob. What the hell? The world needs more Robs.
That's true.
But I might be biased. Hey, did you guys know? I noticed this on Twitter. Our good friends at Descriptive Video Works, they're actually doing the video description for the Olympics right now for NBC.
Really?
Yeah.
For NBC? No kidding.
For NBC, yep. Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, and I mean, it's awesome the fact that they've, decided to do video description for the Olympics at all. But even cooler that, Descriptive Video Works got the contract, I guess. So
Yeah, I think NBC did it the last Olympics too, but
did
there's
they?
a lot more content now. Yeah.
that's a lot of hours of
Well, I don't think they're doing it all.
is that right?
Yeah, I don't think they're doing it all because even NBC isn't airing all.
Well, I mean, but whatever NBC
Yeah,
is
it's
airing,
lots of hours.
they're describing.
Yeah.
The big events are later on in the evening so that we have a chance to look at them. But holy smokes, it just gets so exhausted. I was up watching figure skating last night.
No worry.
Up until about 11:30, and then I finally had to call her quits and go to bed. But
Yeah, we've just been recording it and watching it after.
yeah, we've been doing that too. But I don't know. Even when I'm recording stuff, if I can get a chance to watch it, I'll watch it live because otherwise, I'm gonna hear what the result was. Anyways, somebody's gonna blurt out, "Hey, you know who got a gold medal?"
Yeah.
Shut up! Shut up!
Yeah, no, it sounds like they are doing video description to 18 primetime telecasts of the games, including the opening ceremonies, the closing ceremonies, descriptive video will be incorporated into the live broadcasts as well as NBC's video on demand offerings. So a little vague on how to find out exactly what is described and what's not, but I'm sure if you go to the NBC website or I don't know.
Perhaps Descriptive Video Works will have more on their website too.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll be able to find out. But so for anybody out there who has been waiting for this, there you go. You can now enjoy the pageantry and celebration of sports that is the Olympics.
Woohoo!
Sports.
Did you guys see the articles that I posted into the show notes?
So which ones you did? The Amazon?
Yeah. So the first one was a blog post from a fellow named David Goldfield.
Let me pull it up.
The Fire Tablet. That's what it was.
Yeah. How to install the Google Play Store on an Amazon Fire Tablet. I didn't even know that was possible.
Mm-hmm.
So, but apparently it is. So that's cool. You can get.
Is it complicated?
Not really. No, you basically go into, because it's running a version of Android, you go into settings and developer options, and if you tap that like 7 times, it opens up some more settings, and then in there it allows you to install the Google Play Store.
Now, the Fire Tablet is not available in Canada, though. Am I correct with that? Or is it now? I know it wasn't.
Yeah, you can order them from Amazon.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, so you can get them in Canada.
Yeah.
Are you sure about that?
I can bring up Amazon.ca and look at Fire Tablets all day long.
Okay.
Yep.
Really?
I could.
Really?
Yeah.
You better not.
Yeah, you better. Yeah, dude. What are you doing?
That's his weekend.
I said I could.
You're on the job, man.
I'm on the clock.
No, you can't. That's the wrong response.
Anyways, we'll post that into the show notes. So if anybody's got one of those Fire tablets and wants to do that, they'll have the instructions for doing that.
I also threw a news article in there this morning on Smart Paint.
Smart Paint.
Yep.
Smart
Did
Paint.
you see that one?
No, well, actually, I see the link now, but
Yeah, Smart Paint for people who are blind and they can actually feel.
Tell us about it, Steve.
why doesn't Ryan tell you about
Well, I
it,
don't-
seeing as he posted?
I posted. I didn't read the whole article.
Tell us about what?
Because you guys can pull it up on your phones. And
All right, all right.
Because he's too busy looking up the Amazon Fire
tablets.
Tablet on Amazon all
Don't
day
need
long.
to-
He doesn't have time to read stuff.
Don't need
Okay,
another
so
tablet.
this is from Cool Blind Tech.
Yay.
Hey, our friends at Cool Blind Tech. University teams up to develop Smart Paint to help the visually impaired navigate. Okay, so what's the deal here?
Like Smart Paint in intersections and say, no left, no right, no left, no right.
Stop walking on me. Get off me. Just
Okay, so a little quote from it here. John Lanuti, I'm guessing he's a good Irish boy, said, "The goal of Smart Paint for networked smart cities is to assist people who are blind and visually impaired by implementing a Smart Paint technology that provides accurate location services. You might think, can't a GPS do that? But surprisingly, current GPS solutions actually cannot tell whether someone is walking on the sidewalk or down the middle of the street. Meanwhile, modern urban intersections are becoming increasingly complex. That means that finding a crosswalk aligning to the cross and maintaining a consistent crossing direction while in motion can be challenging for people who are visually impaired." All right, so Intelligent Material manufactures and supplies the unique light-converting oxides that make the paint smart. But it doesn't exactly say here
How it works, yeah.
I'm just skimming down here.
So it sounds like you'll probably need another app on your phone.
I'm sure.
Some intersections might need to have more paint features that enable smart white cane guided entry from the sidewalk onto the crosswalk. Paint that tells users that they've reached their destination may become visible as horizontal stripes along modern sidewalks. These paints could be either gray or black or even invisible to sighted pedestrians, but would still be detectable by
Interesting.
smart white canes to tell users they've arrived at their destination.
Interesting.
That is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
But then, really, at that point, isn't it just kind of another beacon technology?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it
Yeah.
does sound like it. I mean, it sounds like an alternate to it. But then,
I mean, I can take one of the right here beacons and I can narrow the range of it down to a meter. So
Right, but that still won't help you walk a straight line across an intersection.
That is true.
Right.
That
Yeah,
is
it's true. I mean, it sounds like this technology would be very handy for intersections.
Yeah, I
and
suppose if
crosswalks.
you had a line on one side that said go right and a line on the other side that said go left, you could weeble your way back and forth between
Yep.
them.
Well,
then-
it's interesting. It doesn't really talk about what the smart cane technology consists of.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think all that stuff is still in the works.
Yeah,
I
it
mean,
sounds kind of
Prototypish.
speculative at this point.
Yep.
But hey, the more technology, the better.
Absolutely. Hey, there's a new scam, or there's a scam that's back, I guess. The One Ring scam. New scam, basically.
Is this the Lord of the Rings thing?
Yes, one ring to scam them all.
My precious.
And in the darkness, find them. Yeah, so the way it works is somebody calls your number, it goes ring, and then they hang up. And you go, hey, I just got a call from somebody. I've got their caller ID here. I'm going to call them back. So when you go to call them back, you end up being directed to a 1-900 number that can cost hundreds of dollars per minute.
Oh, what?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
And let me tell you, I've known people who've been taken by stuff like this before. Your telephone company will not do a damn thing to help you.
Yeah, because you called out.
it back.
Yeah, you called them. As far as they're concerned, that's that.
So basically, what you call the number, the first thing it does is just like, please hold,
Probably, yeah.
and then puts on some really good music.
Yeah, exactly.
There's another one I heard of recently too that's coming back around where the scammers are calling you, trying to get you to say the word yes. And they're using your voice recording and that yes prompt to make purchases online.
Oh, no way,
Yeah,
really?
They're using your recorded voice
those guys
the
are
vocal
getting
confirmation
sneaky. Oh,
to make
man.
purchases.
See, I miss the days of those Nigerian princes. They're easy to spot.
Well, I had the Canada Revenue Agency scam call me yesterday.
Oh, yeah. I got that a lot.
Yeah.
Apparently, the federal marshals are out for me.
That's
so-
right.
Are they? Was it a live person who called you, or was
No,
it just
it was just a recording.
Yeah.
No, but they're
Still looking for you.
I'm a fugitive. Hey, Ryan.
Rob.
What are we doing today?
Today we are speaking with a gentleman by the name of David MacDonald.
David MacDonald. There's a voice from the past. Holy
Yeah,
smokes.
you guys go way back?
Oh yeah. David and I. I don't remember where I first met him, but I remember doing a conference with him in Quebec City, and we had all kinds of shenanigans.
Oh, is that right? Oh,
Yeah.
interesting. Okay, well,
Yeah.
this will be...
And he's a friend of the show of Shan Noise.
That's right. Yeah, good guy. Just a terrific all-around fella.
Yes. Well, and we'll give the fine folks in the audience an idea, a preview of what he actually does, what he's involved in.
Well, he's been very, very, very involved in web accessibility and
Yep.
web accessibility standards.
Yes.
That's the biggest part of what I know he's been doing of late. But honestly, I've lost touch with him
Yeah,
over
and
the last
that's-
little while, and I don't know all of what he's doing.
Well, then let's call him and find out.
We should do that.
Hey, David, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Excellent.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Just let you know, I always sound like the guy from The GodFather because I tried to be a rock star when I was a kid. So,
Oh, no.
so, that's my disability. So
Well, we won't make you quote Godfather lines.
that's good. That's what I want.
So, Ryan, why don't you do the intros, sir, because that's your thing.
All right. So, David, just to let you know, we're ganging up on you. In the room with me, I have Steve Barclay.
Hello there.
I know Steve well. Yes.
Yeah, we were just talking about that. And we have our main host, Rob Minot.
Hey, how you doing?
Hey, good to talk to you.
I was telling these guys about doing a conference in Quebec City with you. I don't even remember how many years ago.
20 years ago, maybe.
Yeah, probably could be.
I probably had a full head of hair back then.
Nope. Might not have been 20. But I remember fondly walking down the street with you rapping the Apostles' Creed with people looking at us like our brains were melting. But the funniest story, I tell this story to this day, David, whenever your name comes up, about going into the Quebec legislature.
Well, yeah, they thought we were terrorists. Yeah.
So David goes in there and you know, it says National Assembly of Quebec on the building, and he goes in there and he says, "Is this the provincial legislature?" And the security guard looks at him like he's got a hole in his head and goes, "This is the National Assembly of Quebec." And David gets this kind of stunned look on his face and goes, "You mean it's like the provincial legislature?" No, it is the National Assembly of Quebec. So that's for like the province, right? Yes, it is the provincial legislature. He just wanted to get rid of us at that point. Clearly, we did not understand Quebec nationalism properly.
No, we didn't. I didn't anyway.
Funny.
Well, you know what? Let's start the proceedings off with maybe you just giving us an idea of what it is actually that you've been doing for the last 15 years and what you've been up to recently.
Okay. Yeah, so I was about 2002, I was at CSUN, which is a big conference on assistive technology, and I wandered into a room where they were doing WCAG, and they were starting the WCAG 2.0, and I asked them if I could sit in. They said, "Yeah, sure." You know, kind of like I tried to sit on the Quebec Assembly there, you know.
Maybe back up a little and say what WCAG is for those who don't know.
Yeah, sure. So WCAG is the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. And so what that is, it's a standard that companies and governments and schools and all different types of organizations try to follow when they're building their websites to ensure that it's more accessible to people who are blind, who have cognitive disabilities, or who may have some trouble moving their hands, some dexterity problems, these types of things. Hearing, people who have hearing loss or who are deaf, and people with low vision. So it's intended to help webmasters to make their website more accessible to people with disabilities. And so I wandered into this room where they were working on this. The first version came out in 1999, and they were working on a second version in 2002, and it ceased in March of 2002. And, you know, I sat in and I just started making some suggestions, and they said, "Hey, we really like the way you talk. You want to stick around?" I said, "Yeah, sure." And so that was 16 years ago. I'm still on the team. And so so that's kind of what got me started and on web accessibility. And so we spent about the next 6 years finishing off the WCAG. We thought it would only be another year to finish. And it took us 6 years because the web is always changing. It's very dynamic, and as it went forward from about 2003, 2004, 2005, it got more and more dynamic, more things changing on the page after you load the page and all these types of things. And it was difficult to make standards, that would meet these and that would make them more accessible to people with disabilities, particularly people using screen readers. And so that's kind of what got me going on it. And it was really great. Worked out well. And I guess that's we've been doing that ever since. In 2008, we came out with the 2.0, and we really didn't know how it would be taken by the world, and it turned out to be, I guess, one of the most successful standards, any type of standard in a history of standards, I would say, because it's been adopted by at least 10 countries, and it's been adopted by numerous jurisdictions, and it's turned into a very successul standard. And so, I said that I lost my voice because I tried to be a rock star when I was a kid. Well, then I became kind of the rock star that I wanted to be when I was a singer. So I got very busy doing web accessibility for companies and helping the Canadian government as they were addressing some court cases and helping them to migrate to a more accessible website and, working with large corporations. And I still do that today.
So what type of things does the standard include?
Okay, well, I'll give you a few examples. So in 1.1.1, we find text alternatives. So that's the rock star of accessibility. basically, it says, that anything that's a non-text content needs to have a text alternative. That, of course, includes images, and it does also include, form fields and other things that are not text by themselves, video and that kind of thing. So in 1.1, you need a label for your video and for your audio. And then in 1.2, you get into media alternatives, and that's where you get into captions and, audio description and transcripts and, transcripts for audio and all that kind of thing. And then you get into, further on, in 1.3, you get into information and relationships. And that's basically talking about, if you make something look like a heading on a page, make it actually act like a heading in the code. Use a heading tag, and that way a screen reader user can navigate between headings. And of course, search engine optimization will be much better too, because you have proper headings. So that's the kind of things in the WCAG. I could go through the other things like, 1.4 is where you get the contrast, making sure you have your text has enough contrast with the background so that you can see it if you have low vision or if you have trouble seeing colors. And so in the 1.4, we also have, you can't use color by itself. When you're coding things, you need to be able to provide it in another way. So the classic of that these days is, they remove the underlines in links these days in inline text. Mm-hmm. And so, a person who's colorblind might have to move his mouse over the entire text in order to find out what's a link and what's not, because only on hover does the underline appear, So that's an example of a failure of a WCAG. And then in a 2.0, we get into all the operable ones where you, success criterion, that's where you talk about keyboard accessibility, making sure everything works with a keyboard. So can you unplug your mouse and use your website perfectly well without your mouse? And if you can't do that, then you're going to fail 2.1. And so those are the types of things we find in there, and goes on from there.
Now, what was the sort of the climate back sort of in the early 2000s when you first came on? It must have been very different now because, a lot of, well, I shouldn't say a lot, but I mean, some of these accessibility hurdles have sort of become the standard in say the past 10, 15 years. Was it very different back then? Did it really feel like an uphill battle?
Well, I had a good reason for volunteering on WCAG. My phone wasn't ringing much elsewise, right? I was specializing in accessibility, and my phone didn't ring that much, to be honest. And so I had a great boss at the time, and he was really committed to this thing. And he basically, paid part of my salary in order for me to do this work. And so I was very, very privileged to spend that. And that was Bill Shackleton, and the company at the time was eRamp. Now, Bill's basically retired right now, but he's an incredible guy who, was a real pioneer in this field, in this space. And he really mentored me, and he sponsored me, really, and made it possible for me to do that work. And so, it was a very, very different climate. There was not a compelling, the government of Canada didn't get sued until 2006, and the case didn't get solved till 2010. So all those years in 2000 to 2000, we had the ADA, but there wasn't much precedent at that point for applying the ADA to websites because the ADA was, for physical buildings and accessibility for your stores and that kind of thing, right? And so it was a very different climate. I don't know whether I would call it an uphill battle because for me, I was just really focusing on getting the standard right. And then, so I wasn't fighting a lot of the political battles and stuff like that. But what I did notice is right after that Donna Jordan case, it was very funny because I got married in 2011, and I've been a bachelor my whole life, and it's easy to be kind of volunteering for organizations when you're a bachelor because you don't have to make much money, right? But I got married in January, and this incredible thing happened as soon as I got married. Is the Donna Jordan case went through the Canadian government, so I came back from my honeymoon, and the phone rang from Transport Canada. And they wanted to make their website. They wanted me to audit all of the Canadian jurisdiction, like Air Canada and Via Rail and all that kind of thing. All the, transport providers in Canada audit their websites. And so I came back from my honeymoon and I came back to that job, and my phone hasn't stopped ringing ever since. It's been crazy ever since then. So, I've been able to pay for my family, and now I've got a little 2-year-old daughter, and I'm able to, think about putting her in school and all these great things that, that have come, because there's been a demand for what I do. But that's not why I got into it. I got into it because I wanted to do the right thing, and I'm still sitting on the WCAG committee, and we're just getting ready to release a 2.1 now. So that's coming up in June, probably, and we're on our final draft right now, and so that's it's an exciting time. There's now a critical mass for accessibility.
Yeah.
When you're coming out with new revisions like 2.1, for example, what's driving the majority of the changes? Is it actually changes in the web, or is it just revisions on things that you're updating and improving upon?
Oh, it's changes to the web, totally. It changes to the web, the way people work. We've, of course, being where you stand at the WCAG, there's certainly is, a certain amount of criticism for the standard itself. And I understand that because, a lot of people are relying on that, and companies and large, governments are implementing it, and judges are ruling on it. And so, the disability community needs to know that their needs are going to get met if people do follow the WCAG. So there's a really good reason for some of the criticism of the WCAG. But the big thing to understand about the WCAG is that it's a consensus document. And so what that means is that in order, on our 2006 draft, we had 1,200 comments against it. And in our 2008 draft, we'd addressed every one of those comments and got the commenter to either give us a yay, nay, or abstain. And we got on our final draft, our final recommendation, I should say, in 2008, December 2008, we didn't get one formal objection, which is a remarkable thing for a standard. And so when I say I think we got it right, being involved in it, I kind of feel like, I always wanted to play music when I was a kid. And it's kind of like if you happened upon, being involved in writing or producing a hit song, and then somebody would come up to you afterwards and say, well, if you had to change something, what would you do? You're kind of like, well, I don't know, if I would have changed something, maybe it wouldn't have been a hit, So it really was a hit standard. Now, the 2.1, in 2008, the iPhone didn't even really exist. Okay, so
Right.
So, the idea that somebody would actually a person who's blind would put their finger on a screen and navigate with it was, I'd never heard anybody talk about that.
Right.
Ever. So that was a radical thing. And I was able to talk to James Craig over at Apple, who was one of the people involved in that. And I said, you guys just completely blew the doors off with the voiceover on an iPhone. It was just never, we just never even thought of it.
Right.
So we had to, update some of our guidance to make use of that new reality. And so we have, several new mobile success criteria, 9 of them to be exact, in the new 2.1. And so, we're trying to pay attention to those new realities. The other things is, right now in the 2.0, there's a requirement for text to have sufficient contrast with the background, but the low vision community was really hoping for more like icons and for, affordances. Now, what affordances are? Those are little borders and things around buttons so that they can actually see where a button starts and stops. So those types of things are required in the 2.1 if they get through. Now, I have to say that item is at risk right now because the testability of requiring important graphics, first off, what is important? We have a definition of it. We're hoping it's going to survive. But, this would require that important graphics have sufficient contrast also and affordances on buttons and stuff like that. So those are the types of things we're trying to get in. We're trying to get in a new success criterion that's going to help people with cognitive disabilities go forward. There's a bunch of new attributes that that area is looking at right now. The team that's writing area, which is an extension to HTML, which, speaks to screen readers, but helps screen readers, identify complex widgets and how they work and dynamic things. And so we're doing a whole new, standard called COGA, cognitive accessibility standards, where there's attributes that you can add to, input fields to help people with cognitive disabilities actually insert icons that represent the form field so they don't have to read them as much. And maybe have, reminders of them and those types of things. So we're hoping that success criteria get through. We had to really pare it down because the assistive technology just isn't there right now. We're hoping that there's going to be a plugin really soon that's going to be able to do things with this. So what we required is that, organizations that are making their websites and their form fields would have to provide the autocomplete feature attribute on all of their inputs for specific inputs that have to do with the user. And so what that would do is it would make very quick, filling out of forms and help people, have cognitive disabilities, but it also give little hooks where this software could come in and it could swap out icons, put icons. It could make the page simpler based on what they want to see or don't want to see. So these are things that we're hoping that are going to come forward, in the new WCAG. If it doesn't get into the 2.1, there's Silver coming up, which is the next major revision of the WCAG. That's a code name for it. It'll probably have a different name when it comes out. Right. And they're looking around 2000 for that. And that's actually going to take, everything off the table and kind of start from scratch and see, is there a better way to organize it? Is there a better conformance model? And it's just going to relook at it and see if we can improve on it. If we can't, then, we'd do some sort of an extension on the 2.0. But we are revisiting the entire structure to see if there may be, in the new reality, a whole new way to look at it.
So it sounds like, you guys are really sort of racing to sort of keep up with the technology. Is that sort of ever an issue for you guys? Like the technology is actually outpacing how fast you can come up with new standards?
That's a fantastic question. So Steve, you are very, very up on what's coming out in technology. I'd often have great conversation with Steve because he knew exactly what was coming out and what was coming out next and where everything was going. And I think, Steve, you know very well that the technology is moving very, very quickly and we're struggling to keep up with it. And that's very, very true. Just like you guys, I'm operating at the highest levels. There's not a lot of other people, in the world who are, looking at the stuff that we're looking at and trying to solve these issues. And I can tell you that there is absolutely no guarantee that we're going to stay ahead of technology. In fact, we're behind it right now, and we're always playing catch up. So the new technology comes out, then the assistive technology struggles to find a solution to it, and then we make standards to formalize the things that webmasters will have to do in order to talk to the assistive technology that solves the problem. Right. So it's always this triangle in trying to keep up with the technology. A perfect example of that is recently Firefox made a new build, and they changed the way that, the DOM works, or the way it talks to the accessibility API and the way the page refreshes and all kinds of things. And it's been radically different. And the folks over at Freedom Scientific have, they're just throwing up their hands. They're like, man, I don't know if we can keep up with this. So they're working hard with the Firefox team in order to, solve that problem. I understand that 58 is better than 57, but, it's still a lot slower than it was. So, it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And it's scary times, to be honest, because we could have, if we don't get this right, we could have with all of our advances in human rights and all of our technology and everything, with all that stuff, with the disappearance of face-to-face transactions, we could see in the future, a more exclusive society than ever in history. In other words, we could be in a place where people with disabilities will be more excluded than ever before, which is scary.
Yeah, that's frightening.
I'm going to ask a question that may seem obvious to some, but it's not to me. Why is it, if we have standards, that all the web browsers render pages differently? So Chrome will work with one page, it won't work with another, so I have to go to Firefox.
Steve, you want to answer that?
Nope.
Okay, I'll tell you what I think. And Steve, you maybe can jump in and tell me what your thoughts are on this. So these guys are competing against each other, and they're competing at, on very, very subtle differences in speed and everything they can do to try to tweak things, make them faster and all that kind of thing. And so the disability and accessibility is really kind of an afterthought, unfortunately. It's not built in, and the recent stuff with Firefox is a perfect example of that. We had the same thing with Edge, right? Mm-hmm. Edge, was released, and then, a year and a half later, they start thinking about accessibility, right? Or trying to get the accessibility right. So it's not their first. They're not. When the cement is wet, they're not building in the accessibility as much as they could, and so there's a lot of forces driving them, and they're in danger if they lose by 6 months. If they're behind by 6 months, they're in danger of perishing. I mean, the Edge browser right now, I think is about 4 or 5%, and I think IE is down to about 11 or 10% or something. 12, IE 11 is down to something crazy. Anyway, maybe it's not. Maybe it's more than that. It's just, that was Firefox, I guess. I think IE is around 30. Is that right? 40, something like that.
Not sure. It's just IE seems like it's getting more and more antiquated every day. So.
Well, it is. It is. They're not working on it anymore. They're working on Edge, right? And so that's the new browser for Microsoft. And, IE 11, they just keep up because in some of the organizations like banks and stuff, they roll over very slowly. And so they can't move off of IE for the foreseeable future, for the next couple of years anyway.
Right.
So that's pretty, that's the reason that I can see is it's just that accessibility isn't a primary. Now, having said that, HTML5, has two sides to it. It has the code side for the authors, but also has the interpretation side for the browsers. And so I think, going forward, we're going to see more kind of a consolidation. And, I'm hopeful that they're not just going to be mean, and keep doing things differently.
Yeah, it would be nice if we actually had some consistent browsing across all the browsers. Irregardless of what screen reader or adaptive technology you're using.
That would be great, because it'd make my job a lot easier because I'm testing constantly with 3-4 different browsers and 3 different screen readers, right? And 4 different screen readers. So it's a lot of work, for testing accessibility.
Mm-hmm.
So, David, recently we've seen an influx of these internet-connected devices for the home, like the Google Home and the Amazon Echo. Do those present any challenges for the standards?
Well, I'll be honest. We haven't been looking at the Alexa kind of products. That's going to be looked at in silver. At this point, it's naturally a voice interaction device. So if you don't have a voice like me, right? I have a voice disability. It's going to be hard for me to interact with it, very easily. So I wouldn't be very motivated to use that tool. I'd be motivated to go to the browser. It's really a voice interface, search, really, in a lot of ways, So I have to say a big question mark on that. What's going to happen going forward is also probably disability for, hard for people with harder hearing also, right? It's not, so people with voice and hearing problems are going to, have trouble with those devices. And so I'm not sure what, I think it's going to be a niche item that's going to be very common, but it's not going to replace, screen readers and the internet, I don't think. I'm not sure what's going to happen. Now, it might be really great for the blind community because, they can just yell at it and tell it to do something and it'll do it, which would be great. You don't have to go look for something. You don't have to fight with, a bunch of buttons that aren't labeled properly. So there's a lot of wins in it, and I think having those devices is going to really make the world a lot more accessible in the long run. But just like every new technology, there's going to be people who are going to benefit from it. There's going to be winners and losers on it.
Well, even at CES this year, the Alexa, sorry everybody, we just triggered your devices, but the Alexa has been incorporated into many, many laptops and other hardware devices now. It's not just standalone voice assistant speakers. So, that may be a whole new way of interfacing with your computer.
Oh yeah, I would see it. And for people with low vision and who are blind, I mean, it sounds ideal to me. I mean, because it's using artificial intelligence to sort out all the stuff that they missed on the labels and everything. So I think there's a lot of promise there particularly for the low vision and the blind community and the cognitive disability community also.
So how closely do, say, the people at Mozilla or Microsoft work with you guys? Like, do you guys have a relationship where they, sort of tell you what they're up to, or is it basically they just release a browser and then you guys sort of deal with it?
Well, there's that's a really stacked question that could have about a 3-hour answer.
Excellent.
I'll try to give the
All right, longer show. Okay.
I'll try to give the 30-second kind of synopsis of it. We don't have a personal relationship with any of the browser organizations. Now, there's a couple of reasons for that. There's in the Web Accessibility Initiative within the W3C, which is where we belong, there were 3 initiatives initially. So they're the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, which is the WCAG, which is what I've been working on. Then there were the User Agent Guidelines, which were the browsers. And then there were the Authoring Guidelines, which were basically things like, Dreamweaver and, Eclipse and other, things that you use to create content.
Right.
And so there were 3 separate standards. Now, I don't know why, and I'm not going to try to speculate, but for some reason, the User Agent Guidelines are no longer continued under the Web Accessibility Initiative. They have been canceled. The guidelines still exist, but they're not being actively worked on anymore. And so the browsers, I think, I don't know if they were nervous that there may be, they may be imposed, things might be imposed upon them that they may not have as much control over or whatever. But for some reason, that standard is not being worked on anymore. So in the new Silver, in the next version of WCAG, there's going to be more integration between, the browser itself and the actual author, because, we can tell 200,000 authors, to do a certain thing, or we can tell 10 browsers to do it, which is going to be more effective at getting the job done, right?
Right.
And so we would much rather things get fixed in the browser than the authors having to do it. And we're seeing, some really good wins on that. Like a lot of the HTML5, new input things are well supported. We may see in the future, active dialog boxes in HTML where you just throw, you just do, the dialog element and suddenly, boom, an HTML, a dialog box comes up and you don't have to do a bunch of JavaScript and it'll be accessible out of the box. So we're hoping to get those kinds of wins, but that takes a lot of integration between the language of HTML and the browsers themselves. But at the WCAG level, no, because what we're doing is we're telling people how to use HTML and other technologies. In other words, we're not speccing a technology. We're telling authors how to use the technology that already exists. Now, I sit on the HTML5, a committee that's writing HTML5, and we're trying to build in, accessibility right into the standard itself. And, so the browsers are keeping a close eye on that. Mm-hmm. And at the WCAG level, we're more interested in what's happening at the Accessibility API, which is a bit of software that sits on an operating system that talks to screen readers. So we're very interested in that. And, there's a little bit of interface between us and that team, those kinds of teams.
Oh, in terms of authorship, because it seems to me that, in the last few years, the way that a lot of people author web pages these days have changed sort of with the popularity of, say, WordPress, for example. Have you found that? Like, not a lot of people sort of will say use Dreamweaver and just build some pages and upload it to an FTP.
You're absolutely right.
There are a lot of platforms. Has that really changed the game for you guys?
It's totally changed. Yeah, like the CMS, we and React, we're seeing a lot of React, and of course, jQuery, of course, is starting to die in terms of the UI element of it. jQuery itself as a language is not dying, but jQuery UI is starting to die. But React and Angular and all these frameworks now, and also, Drupal and WordPress. I'm naming those 2 specifically because they've actually spent a lot of energy trying to make things more accessible in their open source. It's really, really hit and miss with the CMSs. So when companies are building their websites with CMSs like Dreamweaver, like Drupal or WordPress, they are those are authoring tools also, right? But the thing is depending on what, plugins that they're using, it may or may not be very accessible, right? Because it's an open source community. So, Johnny Lunchbox developer, maybe, over on the side, he makes this cool date picker, but it's not accessible. He puts it into the WordPress, submits it to WordPress where it's accepted, and it suddenly becomes a popular WordPress plugin, And so then you have, no matter how much work you do on the core of the CMS itself, which is, what you get out of the box when you first started, all of the cool widgets like the pop outs and fly down menus and, things that, sliders that go to the right and the left and media players and all these types of things that do cool things, they may or may not be accessible depending on who the author was.
Right.
And so that makes a big difference. And so I'm always, when I often my reports, I'm telling organizations to, fix this particular plugin. And then when they fix it, load it back up to WordPress, get it back to the author and tell them, hey, we fixed your accessibility things in here, and get back to the community that way. So we try to do that.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like it's kind of the Wild West out there when you're dealing with open source, right?
Well, not only open source, but closed source too. It's kind of the Wild West, to be honest. Any of the .NET frameworks like Sitecore, they're all, kind of, the accessibility on them is kind of sketchy also. So, it really, you can't really, there's no safe harbor for accessibility. This really is the Wild West, and it's not for the faint of heart, If you're a screen reader user, like you are, I'm sure you understand going out there. Some sites really work great and others are not so good,
Well, at least we can applaud the fact that Flash is dead.
Yes, that's right. We could make like a celebration song, celebration times.
Yeah, I'm sure that was a thorn in your side for many years.
Flash was awful.
Yeah, well, Flash was hard, but the interesting thing was the people who were doing Flash weren't that interested in accessibility, so I didn't get many calls about Flash.
Yeah.
I taught a few Flash courses, and Adobe, they've got an accessibility department, but I sure wish they would have. I just wish they would be more committed to accessibility, on their technologies like the PDF and the Acrobat and they're hard technologies, so I don't want to fault them too much, but I would like to see them, give more of an investment into those, into the Flash in the old days and into PDF now. Now PDF is dying too. I would say that it'll be relegated to kind of like vinyl, and I love vinyl. It's got a place, and PDF will have a place in the future, but I don't think it's going to have a place on websites as a sort of a regular content delivery mechanism. It'll be great for contracts, for archiving, for, that type of thing.
Right. Yay. Die, PDF, die.
Yeah, pretty darn frustrating, PDF.
Well, and thank goodness we have, companies like VFO who incorporated some OCR capabilities into their screen readers so that we can actually access inaccessible PDFs. Yeah. I mean, you can, but what we don't want developers to think is that they've solved the problem by, doing OCR on it, because you can't navigate. You can't navigate by headings. You can't get to the next table. You can find out what the text is, so that's helpful. But and I'm really glad they did that. But it's we don't want people to stop moving forward on their accessibility because they think that it's going to get solved at the AT level. Right. Yeah.
So in a perfect world, what would you say sort of needs to happen in order to make all of this just work more efficiently and have better accessibility? Is it basically legislation? Do we just need to say, look, if you develop something for the web, it needs to have built-in accessibility? Like, what's the solution?
Litigate.
Well, my phone is ringing a lot more because there's been litigation. There's a lot of people who call me because they're afraid.
Yeah.
And they want the guy from the WCAG, to give them a stamp, and so they want to do the things that I say, and then they want to get the stamp, and then they want to say, see, I meant the law. And so that's a good thing. Now, understanding that WCAG is a consensus document, and somebody can make a WCAG informing site, and it could still have a lot of usability problems for screen reader users. So we want to, when I'm doing my reports, I always say, now that you're here fixing this issue, why don't you just reach up that extra 2 inches and fix this here? And that's going to make it a lot more usable, even though it's not, a requirement in WCAG or something. So I try to do that in my reports. But in a perfect world, it's kind of a balance. You can legislate behavior to a certain extent, but you can't legislate goodwill. And so, I'm nervous. I'm nervous about, the negative effects in the States of the hit and run lawsuits, because I'm getting a lot of calls because of them. Mm-hmm. But there's also a lot of pressure on government to do something to the ADA so that these things don't happen, right?
Right.
And so, there's been a string of lawsuits that, I think any of us in the industry would say, may have had more to do with a lawyer trying to make a buck than it had to do with making the website, the web more accessible. I'm not sure, but it's, I'm not really close to that. So I'm a little outside my area of expertise, only in the area that it bumps up against me from time to time, But I think legislation is critical. Like, I'm working with the Canadian government right now on the Canadians with Disabilities Act. I'm the lead accessibility consultant on that. And, on the how to require WCAG 2.1 in the legislation, how that might look, and all different, nuts and bolts of, they have lots of questions about the WCAG and all that kind of thing. So, I'm a consultant on that project, and I'm totally behind. We got to get laws. We got to make laws, but we have to be careful. I think the root of the problem is selfishness. Selfishness on the part of companies, selfishness on the part of us sometimes. Personally, we want to advance our careers, in a way that's detrimental to other people, so that, the lawyers who are kind of doing drive-by lawsuits, are kind of creating a bad name for people who have legitimate concerns about websites, So I'm not sure. But I know that legislation is one of the key components. The other key component is to really educate people on the difference it makes to people with disabilities. When I go into teach courses, I'll teach, I taught 80 people over at CBC, all of their web developers over there. And you'll get 20 people per class, and in 20 people, you probably will get, 5 of them will really get it really well. 3 or 2 of them will really catch fire, and one of them will become a rock star for their organization. Everybody will go to them, and they will really understand what's at stake here is that the future of people, people with disabilities at stake here. And then you get, another 10 who will want to follow the standard and just want to do, the standard and don't make me do anything more. Just let me do it. Then there'll be 3 or 4 or 5 who'll be checking their email during the course. And it's I can pretty well do a statistical analysis in any course I teach, and I'll get that kind of rollout. If you pull aside 100 students, you get that kind of a breakdown usually. So we need thought leaders, and we need, organizations like yourselves who are, trying to make accessibility more aware, people more aware of what's available to them. We need to educate people who use assistive technologies how to better use their technology. How many screen reader users, I teach people who are screen reader users, and how many times I'll go in and they don't know that when they tab into the radio group, they have to start using the arrow keys to move between the radio buttons. Mm-hmm. Right? These are basic things so we really need to provide a way, and I don't know what the answer is to that, but to help educate people who are using the assistive technology so that all these cool things that the authors are doing and all these cool things that we're doing in the standards department and everybody coming together can actually get used, And I think that's an important key feature too. Before making the complaint, make sure, do I actually know my technology well enough to know that there's actually a problem here,
Yeah.
So that we don't get a bad reputation for doing frivolous lawsuits. So those are my thoughts about it. I don't know. I'm sure there's a lot of other perspectives that are viable and really good too. That's just one thought.
What's your take on some of the things that, say, Microsoft, for example, has been doing in terms of accessibility, like built-in accessibility features into their Office suite, for example?
You know what? I think it's amazing. I think it's really great to hear, the head of Microsoft talking about accessibility, and the head of Facebook talking about accessibility. Can you imagine 20 years ago, the head of a large corporation talking about accessibility?
Well, back then you might have one guy in the organization who was responsible for accessibility, and he was banging his head against the wall constantly because he couldn't get anybody to listen to him, right?
Oh, it was it's like guerrilla warfare, It's like there was no organization. The way accessibility end up in the government stuff, there'd be one guy who had a disability, and then a few people would rally around them trying to help solve the problems that the assistive tech, that the technology was presenting to him. And then there would be a little bit of a leadership thing in that little group, and then there'd be somewhere else. And the problem in the early days was joining up all these little groups together so that they would talk to each other, so they'd be solving the same problems and helping each other. It's very, very different now. So this is exciting to me. I think it's amazing, and I'd like to see Apple do more. I'm disappointed that VoiceOver is not, isn't where it could be. I test on VoiceOver, but there's a lot of things I have to go back over to JAWS and because, it's just not doing the right thing. VoiceOver is not handling. And, when you got an organization as big as Apple, throw more resources at it, guys. Like, stop, don't sit on your laurels, go forward, So I think Microsoft's starting to become a leader again because Apple's starting to get sluggish.
Well, and I think that's important too, is we need to have multiple tools in our toolbox now. I have JAWS, I have NVDA, I have System Access, and they all behave differently, right? So one screen reader just doesn't do it all anymore.
No, and that was what the screen reader survey found. That's just most people are using 3 different screen readers, but there, I don't know what you're finding, but I'm not finding in the field very many people who are serious about, like working, employed and all that kind of stuff, who are using, a MacBook with VoiceOver on it. No. I'm not seeing much of that. I'm seeing everybody's got an iPhone with VoiceOver on it, but I'm not seeing much of it. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I personally still think it's a Windows environment. In the workplaces, Windows is still, everybody's go-to operating system.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, so it's not, so I'm really glad to see Microsoft getting back on it, and I'm glad, I have a new Surface Book coming in tomorrow. Actually, it's an expensive friggin' machine, $3,300, but it's a nice little book that's a nice, cool little Windows machine. So I work in both environments, and I'm kind of keep changing religions on that.
Well, and there's nothing, we're not knocking Apple at all. When it comes to accessibility, they've kind of charged the path, and people who use Macs and voiceovers love their Macs and voiceovers. They have their place.
But I mean, you're right. Microsoft has had a great 2 years in terms of, really coming to the forefront in one of the leaders of accessibility as well.
Yeah, we're very happy about it. And so these things are there's a lot of hope for the future. There's a lot of hope. I don't know what's going to happen. One of the things I'm scared of is, the economy, right? Mm-hmm. That's my only fear, is that when I guess there's 2 things I'm afraid of. If I was to, go doomsday and the cup's half empty instead of half full, the two biggest threats I would say to accessibility going forward are if we get any kind of an economic downturn, my experience is that the 2 things that go first are the arts, and then, things that have to do with accessibility and, charity with a small c kind of thing, things that have to do with trying to help out the guy, who's trying to make things work.
Right.
The little guy. So I'm afraid of that. The other thing I'm afraid of is the genetic testing that's going on and the screening of the unborn with disabilities. That's really scaring me too. As the technology goes forward, we're solving problems, in the world with technology, with our assistive technology. But 90% of people who have Down syndrome are not making it out of the womb, right? And so I'm really scared about that going forward. You know, they're going to be able to detect other disabilities going forward. And I think that's just not the right path. And my wife and I, we, you know, when we were pregnant with our daughter, my daughter was, you know, my wife's 48 years old, got a natural pregnancy. It's amazing, you know, as a natural thing. And the OB said it was amazing. And, you know, the first thing they were asking us all about was, you know, do you want to do some testing? You know, you may not want to, you know, this is a very high risk and all that kind of thing. And I was able to say back to them, hey, I work with people with disabilities. It's going to be okay. I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't even want to see any results. Just, it's going to be fine.
Yeah.
You know?
Ryan? He's thinking, nope.
No, I was just thinking Cowbell's been really silent this show.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah.
We haven't had to ding him at all.
Yeah, indeed.
No lulls. It was a great show.
Yeah, it was. It's fascinating, sort of to dig in and hearing sort of the nuts and the bolts of the standards, because really, you know, a lot of times, you know, we just see the letters, and that's, you know, and we hear accessibility and we think, oh, okay, that means, you know, alt tags on pictures, and without really realizing how deep it actually really goes.
Well, and as someone who's blind, you know, I just want my screen reader to work, right? I had no idea what goes into these standards, so it's interesting.
It's never ask how they make a sausage. But it tastes good when it's out, right?
Absolutely.
Right. David, anything you would like to mention or plug while we've got you here?
Well, there's a couple of things. So first off, I really want to thank you guys for putting assistive technology up front. I want to thank Steve for his years and years and years of dedication. You know, the hard work he's been doing in making the world better for people with disabilities. And he's been right down in the trenches trying to solve problems for real people who have real problems. I really want to thank Steve for his commitment to accessibility and the way that's changed the world. So that's to me is a real, edifying, and it's inspiration to me also, so that's one thing. The other thing is just if people want to find out more about what I do and my website, it's davidmacd.com, davidmacd.com, or you can just Google David MacDonald, M-A-C, MacDonald into WCAG, and put accessibility or something into Google and it should pop right up.
And we'll link your site to our show notes as well.
Absolutely.
Sounds great.
David, thanks so much for joining us and chatting with us today. This was actually really super interesting.
Oh, great. Super. I hope you guys have a fantastic day, and we'll talk to you again soon sometime.
Thanks.
Perfect,
Thanks
David.
so much.
Take care, man.
Okay.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Oh, damn it. I forgot to ask him to say, to make us an offer that we couldn't refuse.
No.
Oh, hold on. Wait. I'm getting squished up against the wall. Steve's head's growing. It's filling the room.
Jeez, I can't take that kind of praise, man. Ego growing.
Oh dear. No, that was really interesting.
Yeah, it really was.
Guy has been around the block and then some.
Yes, indeedy.
But it's still like it still fascinates me. When was that Donna Joden lawsuit? Was that 2008?
I think it said 2006, 2008. We'd have to go back and look. But.
Anyway, it still amazes me that, say it's only 10 years old, like 10 years, and before then there were government websites that just weren't accessible.
There still are.
Yep.
Ugh. There still are. I mean, there's still. I mean, you have to keep in mind there are a huge number of government websites and new ones going up every single day.
Well, and you think of like the government's website, it's not just, 10 pages. It could be 10,000 pages.
Sure. Well, the number in his bio, we're talking about, they were going over 10 million pages.
Yeah, that's insane.
Of government website. Like,
yeah. And then, you've got to think about accessibility for all the forms that are linked to it as well. That's another whole issue there. Because all of those need to be accessible for the government as well. So it's a massive, massive undertaking.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I didn't even think of stuff like, cognitive disabilities. You often just think of, visual impairments, but there's a lot of different
Learning
aspects
disabilities, all that stuff. Yeah.
Yep.
So, and with technology, sort of developing at a breakneck pace, he's got his work cut out for him.
Oh yeah, no doubt. He'll keep himself employed for the next 1,000 years or so.
Pretty much. He doesn't have time for a kid. Hey Ryan,
Rob.
where can people find us?
Well, if you saw my most recent tweet, they can now find us on the Amazon Echo.
What?
Yeah, you can now, if you enable the AnyPod skill,
Hold on.
if you ask your Amazon Echo to enable the AnyPod skill, you can now say a word, play, or a word, ask AnyPod to play the @Banter podcast.
Sweet.
And we now get played.
Gnarly.
So we are on the Google Home. We are on the Amazon Echo. Hopefully soon to also be on Spotify. And the Guitar Dungeon, as usual.
And what about a website?
Oh, a website. Oh, right. That thing. That's
We got one
old.
of those.
That's antiquated.
Yeah, right.
That's www.atbanter.com.
Hey, they can also email us if they so desire. Maybe ask us about what the hell the deal is with that cowbell thing. If you email atbanterpodcast@gmail.com.
Well, isn't that exciting? And, if you're into them social media feeds, you can also get us at Facebook. You can get us at Twitter. And you can get very limited content at Instagram.
Did you actually, speaking of that, did you get the login and pass?
I did, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I did.
Hey, Steve.
Yeah, Rob.
Where can people find you/us?
Well, people can find me and my newly inflated ego at www.canasstech.com. That's Canadian Assistive Technology, CANASSTECH. I am also Steve at canasstech.com.
And what about that guy? That guy that we see at breakfast? That's really cranky and
that Rick Chant repair anything you got kind of dude.
That's the guy.
That dude is available at chaostechnicalservices.com. You got to spell it out the long way. CHAOS for chaos. Technicalservices.com, or email him at chaostech@shaw.ca, and he will fix anything except your cat.
And even then, maybe for the right price.
Yeah, you never know.
All right. That is going to do it for this week. I've been Rob Minot.
I've been Ryan Fleury.
And I am the super inflated ego of Steve Barclay.
Thanks, everybody, for listening, and we'll see everybody next week.
This podcast has been brought to you by Canadian Assistive Technology, providing low vision and blindness solutions across Canada. Find us online at www.canasstech.com. That's CANASSTECH.com. Or call us toll free at 1-844-795-8324. For all your assistive technology servicing needs, call Chaos Technical Services at 778-847-6840 or find them online at chaostechnicalservices.com. Music provided by bensound.com.